Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. I am currently at Sonic Temple, a music festival that's currently down in Columbus, Ohio, chronicling all sorts of different types of punk, rock, metal, you know the gist. Now, through the course of this, I might be shooting some other reviews along the side. You might see some of that come up in the trailing edge, but specifically, I'm here mostly to talk about the bands, talk about the music, talk about the scene, and try to get an idea of what's actually going on. And keep in mind, just because I have media credentials doesn't mean I'm going to be all that kind to everybody here. I also have a couple of my buddies here alongside. I got Luke, otherwise known as...
Did he just say that?
Yes, I did just say that. And also behind the camera, we have Crash Thompson, otherwise known as the Rock Critic. We also have John from ARTV and Infinity on Hannah as well. So they might crop up in a couple of the scenes behind the scenes, and who knows who else you might see behind the scenes in these videos. So yeah, let's cut to something else. Okay, first review of the day. I quickly caught a show from the Jacks, and honestly, I wasn't all that impressed. I mean, they present pretty well. A couple of the songs are modestly catchy. I think they would do well on a mainstream alternative station. But here's the problem. I've heard a band like this before, and they were called the Hunna, and they weren't interesting either. I think the frontman is a better singer, a little bit more expressive behind the microphone, but the four chords and the truth approach is not really doing a ton for me that really jumps off the page. And honestly, the guitar work felt a little bit sloppy in the mix. I think the songwriting's okay. It's not really rising to much, so... But at the same time, I didn't hate it. The crowd tried to get into it. They used the opportunity to press out a new single they had just dropped on streaming, so I will respect that to a point. Otherwise, I don't know. I might check out the single, but I'm not expecting a ton. Light 6 out of 10. Okay, shapes. More on the post-hardcore, metalcore side of things. I can't really say I was a huge fan going in, and to be honest, from what I saw of the show, not a lot has really changed. I think the biggest thing that holds them back at this point is I can point to so many bands they sound like that are not them, and that kind of isolates them in my mind. I can point to the new metal slap sound that's very early 2000s. I can point to certain elements where I can see they're very clearly doing a hook that's inspired by Bring Me the Horizon. I'm not exactly discouraged by that. They pull it off pretty well. The frontman is impressive. I think some of the guitar work is really good. The bass lines come through very prominently. But at the same time, lyrically, they didn't jump off the page at me. I think some of the mic technique is really sloppy, especially around, as you would expect for a metalcore singer in this lane, but still, there is some punching in and out that was a little distracting there. Overall, not terrible by any means. I certainly say if you're more of a fan of this genre, I think you'll get a lot out of it, but for me, it just didn't wow me, not enough to pull me back. Solid 6 out of 10. Alright folks, right now we just got out of seeing Bad Flower on the main stage. I'll be honest, as somebody who was not all that familiar with the band going in, I was impressed. I found a lot that I really liked. What do you think? You reviewed the album.
Yeah, I reviewed the album as part of a FIMI actually. My initial impression on the album was they had a lot of promise, a lot of potential, but I felt like there was a lot of stuff they could do to grow.
Okay.
But having heard them live, like having actually seen these songs performed out in a venue and actually seeing the band's charisma and ability to deliver on stage, I think I was being too harsh. Honestly, I was impressed by what I saw. Those guys have a lot of stage presence.
Yes.
They have a lot of charisma, and the material delivers big time.
That surprised me, because a lot of these were more ballad-like material. There was slower, it was more melancholic. A bit of an early Def Heaven, not Def Heaven, early Def Havana.
Def Havana.
Yeah, not Def Heaven. Jesus, no.
Yeah, wow.
Very early Def Havana vibe. I'm liking some of the presence. You can tell the frontman's got a bit of a preening ego to him.
He's got it, yeah.
But he is able to pull it off.
He is, yes.
I thought the writing was better than I expected. That sort of writing does not normally translate on a stage that big. I was surprised how well it did.
Yes.
I wasn't totally won over by all the hooks.
Yeah. Again, that was one of my issues too.
To me, I think at this point, I think they're a band that's got a ton of promise going forward. I just think a matter of how well it translates. For me, it's a very strong 7 out of 10.
And I would say, like, I bump up my rating to like about an 8, maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I don't usually do 10s, but I'll do 10s for this. Yeah.
All right.
Your show.
So, okay, I just saw Avatar, and this is one of those bands I feel like has a very specific audience, and I am not that. And you know what? I don't have anything against theatricality. I don't have anything against you bringing that sort of pomp and swagger to your sound. To me, they're very much of a heavy metal, quasi-death metal band that steps into that lane. They have a lot of theatricality. They have a lot of theatrics that pull upon some elements of older, almost medieval presentation. I'd like it more if I felt like it was executed competently, and I just don't. A lot of this comes from me coming from more of a power metal background. I will freely admit that I've heard Blind Guardian do analogous sounds and frankly do it a lot better, with a lot more groove, a lot more organic presence. To me, this is very carnival. But even then, if I'm going for a carnival vibe, I'll go to Diablo Swing Orchestra, and they're a band that can actually pull this off well. There's groove to it. Here, I thought the drumming was very mediocre at best. I thought the kick drum mic was way too loud consistently until they managed to level it off later in the set. I wasn't engaged with the vocal performance. I think there were some competent riffs, but at the same time, I didn't think the solos paired with them all that well. I think there is a stiffness to this band that hurts them. I think if they were able to lean into the groove side that a band like Ghost does very well, they would have a stronger audience. Because I think there is an audience for a band that is this heavy and can pull off this theatricality well. For me, it's not that. I'm thinking, I gotta be honest here, this is gonna be a little harsh. I'm thinking a solid 4 out of 10. It's not for me. If anything I described is up your alley, check it out. But again, I've seen other bands do this better. Okay, Zeal and Ardor. I'll freely admit that since my review, I was having only mixed interest in actually seeing them, but I figured I'm here, why not? There was an open gap in my schedule, I'd go swing around. And here's the thing. I still have issues with this band in terms of having more talent than good sense to be able to see it all through properly. And you're absolutely clear that some of my complaints about the band going forward beforehand are still true. Like, you can tell at some point they're running a little out of ideas. Some of the ideas they do have in terms of their presentation are not the best. I question having 2 white guys doing their background vocals, especially given some of the subject matter that they're singing about. That said, the talent is there. There is a raw intensity to their sound that is genuinely gripping, and the elements that are balancing out some of the spirituals are effective. I question how well they're going to continue this long term. You can already tell that they said on stage that they don't talk much, and you can kind of see why. But I don't know, it was enjoyable. I liked it a little bit better than the album, because the album is, in the live stage, you don't have to worry about sequencing issues, and you can focus specifically on the moments that pop as strongly as they do. The set was fine. It's not something I'm going to rant and rave about, but a very light 7 out of 10. I'm okay with this. You see them live, they might be worth it.
You know, on some level, I actually kind of feel bad for Pussy Riot. Because you had the feeling they were never designed to be a band that played on stages this big. I mean, they started off as like a little-known, underground, anarcho-punk, art-punk band that came out of Russia. Then you had the whole politicals thing and getting imprisoned, and then they get released, and now they're touring worldwide off of a lot of the basis of that fame and the controversy that came off of it. And now they're also stuck trying to fill venues and satisfy an audience that probably wouldn't go for the more spasmodic art punk they were doing before. And the sound they're approaching this time around, I'm not gonna say it's bad, but it's a very jarringly out of place with a lot of what's being going on right in here and the rest of the festival for sure. A lot of trap beats, a lot of whirring synths, a lot more melody than you would normally expect, especially in comparison with their earlier work. They still have a lot of the political subject matter, which is plastered up on the screen behind them, and you know what, and to be fair, it's not bad for what it is. You got a lot of Grimes in there, a ton of MIA in there, but at the same time, it gave me the same feeling I got when you see MIA at a festival like this anyway, where the corporate-approved brands are plastered over everything, and you have a very much of an anarcho-punk, art-punk band. You get the feeling that this is just the wrong venue for those sort of messages, and like Jeff Rosenstock wrote a song about this sort of thing. It just doesn't click the way it should. I'm not saying the music is bad. On the one hand, you could make the argument it's subversive that they get said messages out in this venue, but I don't know, it doesn't quite translate, especially when I feel like the music is more confused than it should be. So, very light 6 out of 10. Check it out if you're curious, if you want to actually check out whatever album they might have coming up next, I don't know. It's not really for me. Again, I'm not the biggest MIA fan, so maybe if you're more into that sound, you'll probably pick up more out of this, but take that as you will.
Okay, Halestorm. I've always heard this band is much better live than they are on record, and yeah, it's completely true. It's the sort of thing where going into this particular show, I wasn't sure what they were going to play across their 4 albums. I knew that the sound was immediately going to come through that much cleaner, that much more effectively, because you don't have the issues of Jay Joyce's production or just underwhelming production as a whole, and that's pretty much the case. It gives me the thought that if this band got with a decent producer, the albums would probably crunch a lot more effectively. But yeah, the songs come across really well. They pick up a little bit more of a jam bam approach when it comes to a lot of the more elongated songs, but they're effective at it. The crescendos build really well, and Lizzie Hale is a force to behold behind the mic. It's actually a little bit terrifying how impressively she can scream. Probably the highlight of the day that I've seen thus far. I'm thinking a light 8 out of 10. Absolutely worth your time to see Halestorm live. I'm not the biggest fan of their music or their albums, but yeah, if they have a live album, if they haven't done one yet, they should.
I mean, it's Ghost. What would you expect? Light 9 out of 10. If you see them live, you already know. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of feel bad for some of these opening act bands, especially when your band is called No One Cares. You set yourself up for the punchline there. And you know what, I had some hopes, like, you start off early, everyone's got to start somewhere. I just wish I liked the music more. This is another two-piece, similar to Cleopatra, who I didn't really review yesterday because I didn't catch enough of their set, but I thought they had some potential as a two-piece, being able to do some interesting thing with your effects pedals. They kind of stand out. I think the songwriting was creative enough. No One Cares, not so much. You can very clearly tell they want to hop on the Royal Blood bandwagon, except with a live guitar instead of a bass, and I mean, it's not bad, but it's not great either, especially in the writing. There's a rawness and bluntness that I'm not sure is backed up by the presentation all that well. And when you have lyrical issues like that from the very start without a bassist or without more creative guitar work, you're kind of striking out. I don't know, for me there is some raw appeal to a sound like this. I know they will have an audience, so light 5 out of 10, but don't say I didn't warn you if they're not your thing. Okay, Boston Manor. I'll freely admit, these are one of the bands on which I've heard a lot of hype for them, but I've never actually heard them live or even really listened to much of their albums. So this is another case where I was going in cold. A lot of the sound, I'd say it's more on the punk, post-hardcore side with a little bit more of a pop focus, at least in terms of being able to structure their hooks. And I'll say them, they've got hooks that go on for days. I was surprised where they were placed in terms of staging, because you'd think that they would be a bigger draw than they are. At least on the come up the way they are, I think they're probably going to be getting bigger billing for at least as much as the fans get into them. It's still not quite the kind of music that I'd be crazy about. Again, it's more on the post-hardcore side. There's an edge that I can respect, but doesn't always translate deeply for me. I think melodically they're a little shaky as well, but overall, sonically, they've got an appeal. I can see there being an audience for them, and stuff I heard I kind of liked. So, very light 7 out of 10. If you're in town, you want to hear them, they'll probably put on a hell of a show. Check them out. Okay, I need to catch up on a couple things that I saw yesterday and I just couldn't get good footage of, or / I kind of missed some audio of. So, movements yesterday. More on the post-hardcore side, a little bit more vivid vocals, generally pretty impressive. They're one of those bands I wasn't quite sure of going in, and I generally liked a lot of their sound. The guitar tones were pretty well developed, their hooks were pretty overall strong. But if there's a band where stage presence does matter, and that kind of threw me off guard that there wasn't more of it, it was for movements in that lane. I just was kind of underwhelmed by the fact that they just weren't presenting as strongly as they could, especially with some of the songs they did. Now, granted, given the more lyrical nature, I'm not sure how well some of those would have translated live anyways, but overall I think the tunes and the writing was strong enough that it could have presented a little better. So, for me, you know what, I'm thinking a 7 out of 10. I generally liked a lot of what I heard, so we'll see where it goes from there. And here's one thing that I actually wanted to talk about yesterday but did not get a chance, and that is Fever 333, and I brought my buddy Crash Thompson to talk about this. He's the expert here.
I'm happy to oblige you on this one, dude.
So what do you think of the live show there?
Oh my god, just so electric, so intensifying. Their front man is just nothing but a ball of energy. He was all over the stage.
Literally.
You've probably already seen the clips of him online where he walked out into the crowd, got on one of the banners, and was literally just screaming the lyrics while security guards were behind him, holding them up.
To the point where you literally couldn't hear or make out some of the lyrics.
Yeah, oh yeah, no. let's say it was an intense, very kinetic, very volatile show.
And I would agree with some of that. Now, this is one of those things where I say they're not entirely my thing.
Yeah, which is understandable because they're doing something very different. It's a very old school kind of rap rock.
Yeah. Well, it's rap rock, but you got that new metal slap. You have
yeah.
some of that chunkiness in the low end with some elements of the percussion that feel a little bit more programmed.
Exactly.
But even still, their front man, if you want to see this band, you go and you watch for him specifically.
Yes.
Although, I'm going to criticize this a little bit. If you're going to scream like that, and you want to put as much emphasis on your lyrics as he clearly does.
Yeah, but it's hard to make him out though. So what he's singing about, very pertinent, very topical, very well executed lyrics.
Yeah.
But again, through everything he's with him flailing and flying around, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to make out what he's trying to say. It's probably part of the reason why they also have so many mid segments, so many mid-stage sort of chances where they'll speak out. He went on a little tirade about what's going on in Ohio right now with the abortion laws that got signed over here, and also he went on a big rant on misogyny. Like between every 2 or 3 songs, he would go into kind of a little preachy segment, and I could see the crowd by the end of it, by like the 4th one, the crowd was kind of starting to turn on it a little bit.
Well, here's the thing, like, I don't mind that sort of thing. Like, you get what you paid for when it comes to a lot of those.
Exactly.
It's like people who get angry when Bono gets political at a U2 show.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just part of the experience. You should know.
So what would you probably give the show out of 10?
I'm a big fan of this band. I like what they're doing. Strength in Numbers is probably going to be on my album of the year list.
Okay.
Probably. I'm going to give the show I'm going to give it a light 9. I really had fun.
Okay.
It was fun. Guys, if you can, even if you're not a big fan of the album, catch the live show. It's worth it just to see what happens.
That actually brings one more question before I give my score. In terms of the comparison of the production sound and how much it translates live, how well do you think it turns out?
I think it's better live than it is in the studio, for sure.
Really?
Well, again, this is music made to jump around and get rowdy to. And
okay.
God, in this kind of setting, it's just gorgeous. It's just beautiful.
And I think for me, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. For me, it's not my thing, but I can respect when I see something like that done very well, and this band has this sort of presence and firepower that I saw with Rage, and I'm not even the biggest Rage Against the Machine fan. So, yeah, if you want to see these guys live, it's absolutely worth it.
Must catch.
Make some fucking noise! Okay, Gojira, I also saw yesterday. I'll freely admit I have not quite covered Gojira in the same way on my channel. They're just one of those bands that I've never had a chance to really get into or dig into in the same way. More in the prog metal side, a little bit more on the gent side as well. I'm familiar enough, but not hugely had the chance to delve into any of their albums. And honestly, I think I probably could, going off of their last performance here. I will say that it does imply a certain amount of endurance and tenacity when the guitarist gets scorched by the pyro and still able to come back out and shred effectively with some pretty interesting prog rock structures and prog metal structures as well. That being said, I'm not quite sure it's my thing. I always struggle in this particular brand of gent-driven, more composition groove structured brand of prog metal in comparison with the more melodic stuff. That said, from what Gojira did, they said they were rusty and I couldn't tell, so that speaks to a lot to their talent. I would say a very strong 7 out of 10. Check them out if you're curious. If you get a chance to see them live, definitely do so. Hope they don't run into accidents like the pyro like they did today, or did yesterday. So, yeah, good stuff. Okay, Teenage Wrist.
I'll freely admit I didn't have high expectations. Okay, I didn't have any expectations for this band, mostly because they're another opening act. We haven't seen a lot from the opening acts that's really wowed me, and they're coming in fighting back some pretty significant wins, so that's hard to handle. Props to the band, though, for sticking out, going into their set pretty effectively, and I'll say this band has some real potential going forward. You can tell they're still kind of raw and being able to iron out their formula. The writing's not quite there yet, and I do think some of them could afford to ease up on the effects pedals. I will cut them a lot of slack because you can tell the systems that they're trying to deal with the windstorms are a little bit on the off and off, and you can't quite tell that a lot of the mixing in terms of balancing the harmonies between the two lead singers, not quite there yet. But honestly, I really like a lot of what I'm hearing. The melodies are strong. The band comes out with a lot of energy. I think they command the stage better than acts that were billed higher than them, and I gives them a lot of credit there. I think the songs are there, and I like the approach. The harmonized vocals with almost the post-rock blend of hard rock, quasi-post-hardcore thing they're going for. There's potential there. So, yeah. I like this. I want to see more from them. I might check out that EP, so solid 7 out of 10. If you guys get a chance to hear them, maybe in a better venue or a smaller venue where they can more monopolize and control the atmosphere, I think this band can do real well. Check them out. Okay, Royale. I mean, what do you even say about a band like this where their entire conceit is style over substance? On that level, if that's all they're setting out to be, you kind of have to grade them on that curve. And I guess on that curve, I'm just not all that wowed. I mean, there's theatricality, there's some flair. The frontman's got one hell of a growl and rasp to him. I can respect that, and they will sell the hell out of it. But there's just not much to it. Like, in terms of the grooves, I find them underwhelming. The hooks are a little repetitive and a little undercooked overall. I'm just kind of underwhelmed. I feel like if you're gonna have this much style and flash and trying to go for that veneer, you gotta be a little bit more operatic with it. You gotta have a little bit more flair to it. As it is, strong 5 out of 10. Like, it's passable, it's decent enough, like I won't turn it away, but it's also nothing I'm ever gonna seek out. So take that as you will. Okay, Glorious Sons. It's kind of funny going back to talk about this band, given that I reviewed them originally 5 years ago when they were just blowing up, and I was seeing them in club venues, and now they're on the main headlining stage. And you know what, I gotta say this, they can command a stage like that. That genuinely surprised me. In terms of that massive pivot to more, from the grunge that they started off with, the grunge and hard rock, to more of a southern boogie rock, but not in a way where it's oversold or done in a way that's almost caricaturish. There's some meat and grist to the sound that it's almost Blackberry Smoke, but a little heavier. The frontman is a powerhouse. The hooks are as dynamic and electric as ever, and they had a genuine crowd presence I did not expect. They had fans that were legit getting into them, and honestly, I would say it's one of my favorites thus far of the entire festival, except they didn't play heavy. And that was probably my favorite song. It was their breakthrough single, and it was the sort of song that would be obvious to close the set with, and they didn't. Minor nitpicks aside, honestly, I had a blast with this. This was one of the acts I was really looking forward to. Light 8 out of 10. Absolutely worth seeing. Okay, the Struts. Honestly, they're the sort of band I feel like I should like a hell of a lot more than I actually do. Calls on a lot of glam rock, calls on a lot of Queen. The frontman has a ton of energy. The hooks are great. The grooves are great. Overall, I think the band's got a lot of talent, and I'm not sure they have the songs. That's a weird thing to say, because you like to think that this sort of format and style would come together more effectively. Again, I totally get why they have fans, but if they want to be more than a retro pastiche, then they need to have a few more elements making them a little less derivative of the stuff in the past. And they wear their influences probably a little too strong on their sleeve. Not a bad band by any stretch. I want to stress this, and I have a lot of fun watching them, but it was also very hard for me to listen to them and not think of, well, a bunch of these songs could sound like B-sides or deep cuts from any Queen album or any mid-range glam rock band from the mid-70s. Overall, the presentation is really good, but again, the songs need to be there. So I'm thinking a solid 7 out of 10. They're definitely worth seeing, but I'm still a little bit leery of fully embracing them. That's all.
Looking to the sky to save it. Looking for a sign of light. Looking for something heavy. Burn out light. Looking for a complication. Looking to the tide of trying. Make my way back home and action.
I mean, not really a ton to say here. It's the Foo Fighters. They've been a pretty consistent and a pretty great band for years now, especially live. And really, if there's a place to actually go see the Foo Fighters, it's on a massive festival stage like this. I will give them a lot of credit. They are a band that has so many hits over the past couple of decades that they can just play their hits and maybe space out a couple of covers and they'll be just fine. And Dave Grohl still sounds pretty incredible behind the microphone. It's a tried and true band full of professionals, and I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a big fan. I didn't get a chance to see a lot of the set, but what I saw, I genuinely liked. Light 8 out of 10, absolutely worth seeing. Hell, if I had a chance, I probably should have stayed longer. So now I'm about a week and a half away from Sonic Temple proper. I just want to do a final thoughts and a bit of a wrap-up video here, just basically talking about what I overall thought that I haven't already covered in another wrap-up video that I filmed with Luke Spencer over on his channel. Please go check it out. Frankly, the most work out of the entire crew and actually going through this, it's absolutely worth it, and he puts in a ton of effort to try and make sure he gets the interviews, he gets good shots, and it really does show through. Now, start off with Sonic Temple. This is the first time I've ever had media credentials for this sort of thing, and as such, I wanted to do my due diligence, try to get footage, try to get reviews, and try to do what I do best. And I had a lot of fun doing it. Media was conveniently located. This is the first time I've ever been to a music festival where a lot of the stages have been either in a stadium or adjacent to the stadium, so it was very easy to get around. Things were very clearly laid out. And yeah, you're gonna run into the occasional bit of weather, but it was not in a way where it was obtrusive. There were a couple cancellations that a lot of people got very angry about, but not to the point where it caused a social media firestorm outside of the single weekend event that actually happened. You're not seeing a lot of people are posting massive think pieces and rants about the fact that Bring Me the Horizon got canceled. And again, I understand the anger that comes when you have your favorite band that winds up getting canceled. That sucks, especially if you traveled to go see them. I guess my counter argument to that is that Bring Me the Horizon are touring on a mediocre album that's not doing all that well, but again, it's your favorite band, that's up to you. A few other points that I want to call out. I think a lot of the artwork, a lot of the stage design was really genuinely impressive. You've seen pieces of it spliced in through the B-roll, and I'd like to think that the overall event turned out well. I'm actually pretty impressed how much they want to make it both a music festival and an art festival, and really the commitment to that form of detail makes for a very immersive experience. And I'll say this, a lot of the food, a lot of the drink vendors, they put together a good scene here as well. I've certainly been to worse music festivals when it comes to this sort of catering and confectionery. Overall though, if I were to highlight one thing out of the whole media experience that I just want to pass on more as advice, not to the festival promoters themselves, but to the artists and their promotional teams, I think it makes a lot more sense if you guys actually come and work with YouTubers, or at least people who are in our brand of content creation. I understand that specifically in the rock music realm, there is a lot of pressure to speak to radio and the established architecture when it comes to marketing and promoting of your music. But at the same time, I question how much reach and exposure that a lot of those radio moments will get beyond some cursory spins on established channels. Whereas you take a look at a lot of YouTubers, we speak to a larger and broader and expanding audience that I think would be better suited to the modern world when it comes to music promotion. That's all I'm saying. I think there's an audience there that is otherwise untapped that would like to hear what you guys would have to say. Often presents more of a fresh perspective. I'll admit that I wasn't like Luke Spencer going out and getting interviews in the same way, but I'd argue, and I dare say, an interview in that format might be able to penetrate a little bit more than every other umpteenth radio station. And that's not bashing on radio. In that particular forum, there is an architecture and system that is probably the easiest way to get spins and get money on that pressure. But that also kind of avoids the issue of what radio is today. A lot of the playlists that radio get is passed down from on high. So going to your average radio DJ, unless you have an independent college radio station who has the flexibility to play whatever the hell they want, it's not going to get you the spins you're looking for, especially in an era, if you're looking to get on the Billboard Hot 100 where streaming is more dominant. I'm a little bit surprised you don't try to build more of an organic groundswell out of the internet content creators who probably share more in common with you guys than your average radio guy. I'm just saying that in terms of advice for promoters and artists going forward. And there certainly were some artists who were very recognizing of the work that we put in and also very appreciative of the coverage we gave them. I will certainly give them a lot of respect. It wasn't me primarily. A lot of that went to Luke Spencer and John over at ARTV. They actually got more recognized in that vein. But overall, it was a terrific experience. I'd love to come back in future years. Again, I'm still going to be kind of harsh when it comes to my reviews. Again, there are some acts that wouldn't be billed in a vein like that for me, but they have their audience, and I do respect that. So overall, the Sonic Temple experience, light 8 out of 10. Definitely worthwhile. I'll probably make a chance. If I can come back, I certainly will. Until next time, or till next year, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.